Hey, it's Pastor John here with Corumdale Church. Wanting to take a moment to respond to a question we got this Sunday. One of our Connect cards. I'm going to rephrase the question just so privacy can be protected. But the question is essentially asking this: if you're a parent and you've got kids, and those kids are maybe struggling with pornography, what can you do? So the answer of this is going to be directed obviously to the parent. And there's a couple, I would say, external things that you can do and then internal things. And the internal things are primary, but that doesn't mean that the external things are meaningless. So let's start with external stuff. The reality is that because of technology and the internet, access to pornographic material is incredibly easy today, especially for young people. So, for example, this is my iPhone, and this thing means that I have instantaneous access to pornographic material whenever I want, wherever I want. And so, one of the things I think that as a parent that we need to do is make sure that we are setting up boundaries for our kids and protecting our kids from a world of danger that is accessed through one of these things. Some ways to do that are to make sure that kids don't have private access to the internet. So at our house, for different reasons, but same principle. The computer that our children use, we try to limit the time, and the computer is placed in a very public way, so that there is no secret access to internet sites. Whatever is done on a computer is done out in the open, where it's visible, where everybody can see, where everybody can hear, and this just builds a level of accountability into the system from the get-go. I really don't think it's for the most part wise for young people to have access to tablets and phones all the time. I simply think it is just an incredibly dangerous situation, and especially if somebody is struggling with lust, having a tablet or a phone or a computer in a private space is really setting them up for disaster. So think about some of those boundaries that can be established where internet access is done in a way that is visible and public and not private. There's also apps and programs you can apply to that help monitor online behavior. Covenant Eyes is one example. There are other ones. There is software from Triple X Church, I believe, that can help with monitoring too. And then those things can be helpful, but those are not necessarily going to get to the heart of the issue. So I think those are important. Think about limiting access, doing it in a public way, perhaps some resources to monitor internet behavior, but ultimately what needs to happen is really a transformation of the heart. And I think one of the things, especially with the issue of pornography, is that it is a serious issue, but sometimes I think that we forget that it's ultimately an issue of the gospel. So Romans 1 talks about suppressing the truth and exchanging glory, and all sin is ultimately that. It's exchanging the truth of God for a lie, and it's worshiping created things rather than the Creator. And one of the things that we love to worship is the human body, because because people are made in the image of God, and so as you're walking through the heart issues, we need to realize that lust is really glory exchange. It's looking for something that our hearts were hardwired to receive in relationship with God, but we're looking for that in broken ways. We're looking for that in God's image bearers rather than in God Himself. And one of the things that's always really interesting about the way Paul talks about sanctification, I'm thinking specifically of Colossians 3 in verse 5, it says, "Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you, sexual immorality, impurity, passion," and he keeps going on for all these things. You wonder, how does Paul intend for us to put these things to death? Well, just a couple verses earlier in chapter 3, it says, "If you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on the earth, for you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. And I think what he is talking about is there are incredible resources available to us in the gospel. Um, and it is by taking the truth of the gospel and thinking about it and applying it to our lives and returning to the truth of the gospel that we are, as Tim Keller would say, we're more broken than we can possibly we ever thought, and we're more deeply loved than we ever possibly imagined. It's continuing to go back to the gospel and bringing the gospel to bear on our hearts, on our temptations, on our idols, on our struggles, on our lusts. That's what will ultimately transform the heart. So what the heart is attaching itself to is the resources of the gospel rather than attaching itself to images on a screen. So that the glory of God must replace the glory of what is created. And in that there is great freedom. And it's not by just suppressing lustful desires, but it's finding a source that is more gratifying than pornography. The problem with porn is not that, to use C.S. Lewis's language, it's not that we want too much. The problem with pornography is that we don't want enough. We are settling for less than God's glory. And so there's all sorts of things that motivate an individual in their heart to look at pornography. There's fear, there's anxiety, there can be a lack of self-worth, so many things that feed into that problem. And those are issues that ultimately can only be dealt with and be made right by bringing the gospel to bear on that. So remember thinking about external things and internal things. 2 resources I would recommend for you. One would be How People Change. And the other book would be Counterfeit Gods. So Counterfeit Gods by Tim Keller. How People Change, I think, is by Paul Tripp. I think the last name's Tripp. I can't remember the first name. Or David. There's 2 brothers. But How People Change and Counterfeit Gods. I think those would be really good resources at kind of understanding the inner workings of the heart and what the heart is looking for and how it is that the gospel actually transforms us from the inside out. So I hope that's helpful. It's really hard to talk about an issue like this in a couple of minutes, and I can see I've already gone 7 minutes. So I'm deeply sorry for that. Please feel free to approach me on a Sunday, re-ask on a Connect card, send me a message on Facebook if that's helpful. But I hope this was at least a little helpful in shaping your thoughts about this. And be hopeful. The power of the gospel is greater than the power of sin, and there is victory in Christ. And those things are absolutely true. So hope to see you Sunday. Take care.